time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
And a pleasant good evening to you and yours, and welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on this Thursday, the 5th day of July, 2018, along with Professor Tom Hayes, yours truly, Will Pelagic, Phil Kornbluth, continuing his week of rest and relaxation. He'll be back with us when we reconvene for ACC and SEC Media Days here, middle part of the month. We'll continue to keep you entertained, though. Feel free to join us, 800-956-7266. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com, and on Twitter, use the hashtag, of course, ST Recruiting for recruiting news, and find us on Twitter at SportsTalkSC, and also find us on Periscope, either via the app or on Twitter. Also, our YouTube links online at sportstalksc.com. Still some stuff to unpack, some stuff that happened on the 4th that we need to get to, some recruiting news, and also some news to at least keep you abreast of that's going on with both South Carolina and Clemson. I hate to start on a not somber note, but at least a note that is a more serious note than some of the lighthearted, tomfoolery that we talk about here, and that's, of course, kind of an update on the story about Javon Charleston. If you read the state newspaper this morning, Sophia Thomas, who is the woman in the police report that basically accuses Charleston of breaking into a woman's home and then having an altercation with a man she was sleeping with, and then that Charleston grabbed her neck, pushed her down the stairs. Sophia Thomas says she is that woman and that she is the ex-girlfriend of Javon Charleston. She said on Twitter very shortly after the incident was reported, "Don't believe what you read, and that just will do him right." She goes on to tell the state, "We might not have had the best relationship, but together or not, that's my best friend, and I never want to put him through anything like this." Charleston still remains suspended from the team pro. Like I said, I'm not here to try to indict Charleston, but I mean, this is kind of why we always say with incidents of this nature, wait and see before trying to condemn somebody of any wrongdoing. Although I still don't know how this will be resolved.
Yeah, well, again, the university, as soon as you're caught up with the anything that has to do with the legal system, you're suspended. Right. And they do that automatically. As we were talking about that before. That's to alleviate any problems with the athletic director nor the coach having anything to do with it. And I think that's a good policy. But the key point is, anytime you get in the relationship involving young people, there's going to be some problems, which you would think probably at their ages at this time, they would have decided to hash things out on their own. Because once it gets out in the public eye, the court of public opinion and every other court starts to step in with their opinion. And
that's the hard part about this whole situation. And again, like I said, I'm only going off about what we said with the police report, but also, just from the standpoint of what that was saying, that's a very non-biased account. I mean, and the stuff that was in there, again, the breaking and entering, the physical altercation with the gentleman, and also with the young lady, that obviously is very, very bad. Now, she's saying that really didn't happen the way the police report said, and that she was shaken up by the whole incident. And, she even said that the Lexington County Sheriff's deputy basically pressured her into pressing charges, if you will. That's from the article. That's not something that I'm reporting. It's something that the article said. And, they were talking even to victims advocates when it says, well, a lot of times, this is a very, very sticky situation in a gray area. And again, you never want to stand in and judge people in a moment like that, where they're obviously in a state of confusion and a state of just emergency, if you will, from that perspective. And so we'll see how this continues to play out. I feel bad from the standpoint for the young man, because this was a guy who we've talked about, was a walk-on, a couple different position changes for him. He had found himself a niche on the defensive backfield for South Carolina, earned a scholarship, And all of a sudden, now we're talking about a legal issue with him, and whether or not something does happen. This is again our first opportunity with Will Muschamp to see how he rules on something of this nature.
And I think knowing Muschamp, he'll be as fair as possible. But the key point is, people have to learn that when you fly off the handle, or use an old country term, and you lose your temper, nothing good comes of it. Especially when then it resorts to something else like violence. He needed to get on the phone and call her and discuss things.
And then apparently
adults.
Yeah, he was texting her or whatever, and she stopped responding or whatever. And again, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Reasonable to think that someone might be asleep. But
thank you.
At the same time, again, I'm not sitting here trying to judge the man's decision making. That's not what I'm trying to do here. What I'm saying is this is an unfortunate situation for those who are involved. And again, it happens at a position for South Carolina from just the pure football thinking standpoint. Again, we hope the best for them in this situation, that it gets resolved peacefully and in a way that that satisfies both parties. But it happens for South Carolina at a position where they cannot afford any atrophy.
Well, my point is, I may be in a minority, but I didn't think Javon Charleston was going to be a guy that got a lot of playing time at that position. No. In fact, my feeling was he's valuable to that team because he is a tremendous special teams player.
He is true.
That's the value. He
great on covering kicks. Yeah.
And my point is, I think Muschamp thinks even with the youngsters he has in there that don't shave yet, he's got enough talent with maybe I would think he may go with an all senior backfield. At least 4 of the defensive backs may be seniors that he puts in there. That while Charleston is a valuable guy to have coming off the bench, his value is on special teams. I think that's where they lose out as far as that's concerned. But here's a guy who could lose it all when he walked on and got a scholarship, and then he flies off the handle. And that's why I'm saying you can lose a lot when you lose your temper and you get in a violent situation.
Yeah, you're certainly thinking about, what could happen with Nick Harvey in the backfield there, and Keyshawn Nixon, Stephen Montag, some of those names, JT eBay, the transfer, the graduate transfer from Rice. So there's a lot still to kind of be sorted out there. But again, like you said, it's a spot that South Carolina does not have a whole lot of depth, and we'll see how they can resolve that. A couple of things in recruiting that we'll get to. Korn was able to talk to Brandon Fields. Yes, he is still doing recruiting while he's on vacation, and we'll have at least the details of that conversation and an interesting twist that we did not necessarily bring you right away. Now that we've talked to him, a very interesting situation there with a guy who is a 2-sport athlete and plans to be that way when he comes to USC. So we'll expound on that. Remember, we told you about the 4th of July commitment announcement from Brendan Clark, Clemson quarterback target just outside of Richmond, Virginia. He ended up picking Notre Dame, also had North Carolina on his final short list, but Clemson already has a quarterback in the 2019 class, and Tyson Pumachan. They didn't necessarily need anything out of Clark, but Clark is going to take his talents to the Fighting Irish.
The way I'm thinking of this thing, I've always thought that it would be nearly impossible to truly commit and get verification of a commitment during the dead period.
Yes.
Which either tells me one or two things.
It's not really dead.
He did it anyway, or he already told Notre Dame he was coming before the dead period, but waited until the 4th to announce.
I mean it is what it is. I think you have to. I don't know if you can let them know. I don't know what the actual contact is on that, or whether the rules say that you can tell a coach you're committing, or how that works. But at the same point in time, like you said, is a dead period really dead if you can still text a coach a commitment? Doesn't make sense. But who knows? And there's something you brought about that I want to get into next when it comes to that, because I'm wondering if this could have an effect of what we see for Clemson recruiting, at least here in the near future. 800-956-7266. A couple of interesting notes to talk about, including a brand new ticket policy as well with Clemson students, which we'll get into next.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. So you mentioned this, Pro, going into the break and also earlier today, and you were talking about about Clemson's recruiting practices, and not just their recruiting practices, but just the fact that when you have somebody of the nature of a Trevor Lawrence, and you have Pumachan in the fold for 2019, you wonder how difficult it's going to be over the next couple of years for Clemson to want to recruit a quarterback the likes of Lawrence or Pumachan, because they don't want to necessarily have to wait in the wings to try and get some playing time. And that's something, obviously, that while they have 2019 locked up, they don't have a 2020 guy yet, obviously. They only have like one commitment in the 2020 class, Monte Capehart of Hartsville. So in that reign, it's obviously something that is different that they're going to have to deal with. But we saw how much that quarterback room basically had a lot of attrition from the beginning of basically the offseason to, Zara Cooper leaves, Tucker Israel leaves, Hunter Johnson leaves. I mean, it's in my opinion, that's the one position where you can only play one and nobody wants to sit, but you have to take one every year.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's almost like you don't want to say it, but you almost like to recruit with a guy whose idea is he immediately knows he's going to redshirt.
Right.
And have to put a year at least in between him and who the superstar is at that time, and give them a chance to develop. But, the big guys who goes to the Elite 11 and all of that, they're not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So can you find a quarterback that is willing to sit, wait, who's maybe under the radar, who may be a great quarterback down the road, but not now? And that's the type of quarterback that could make a good stopgap measure if your number one guy has his bell rung or whatever. So there's the key into just knowing the personalities in that quarterback room.
And that's the other thing too. It's like, can you win with Chase Bryce? I think you can.
Yes.
With Clemson's situation right now. But at the same time, they had to take a guy like Ben Batson, who they were projecting to use elsewhere in the field. It was something that made them a little bit easier to at least have another depth, have more guys to get reps there. But in my mind, you wonder if not having another established guy there will hurt them in the future.
Well, the key point is, and it's only a few examples you can pull out, and the only example I can pull out now, and it's probably a bad example because what happened to the program ultimately, but it has nothing to do with it. With my example, is the fact that the year that Baylor had one of their juggernauts, and quarterbacks were dropping like flies, remember? And they had to go to the third string guy,
right?
And they still didn't miss a beat. But that was, they got quarterbacks who were at a strong level, but some right under the radar enough that when they came off the bench, they were ready to go. But that's very difficult to pull off.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. This is big. For a limited time, Founders Federal Credit Union's 5-year certificate is at its highest rate. Don't miss your chance. Visit foundersfcu.com or one of your local offices to apply. The Clemson Athletic Department today released some brand new information about the ticket practices when it comes to the student tickets. This is something that was a big hot button item on the desk of Dan Radakovich, including the Board of Regents, who basically gave him one such task this offseason, that is fill the hill. That was something that he said to us on his close of school interview with us here on Sports Talk. And this is the new ticketing initiative. And I know people who are of the Clemson persuasion were I don't want to use the word angry, but maybe miffed about the policy now moving to this new fashion. But basically what's going to happen is 10,200 tickets are going to be student tickets. That's the allocation out of the 75, 80 that you get on a regular Death Valley Saturday. About an eighth of them will be student tickets. 3,600 of those will be a season ticket package that is available to students. Again, first come, first serve. You buy it before the season, you get a guaranteed seat, and you're there for that. They have a lower deck option, which is $280, an upper deck option that's $210. That's a departure from before when they all used to be free. They will still have free options, and it will be allocated via a single game lottery for seats both in the decks and also for seats that are on the hill. Basically, every game will be in the pot, so to speak, and you'll get put in the hopper, and we'll see if you draw it. A lot of that comes down to your grades and IPTE points as well. So that will basically go into that lottery, and you will have that made available on game day as well for those who basically are in the lottery and don't pick up tickets or don't wish to use those tickets. Those can be put back into the hopper for free pickup on game day. In addition, they're going to hold 1,500 Hill tickets for game day only pickup as well, along with any of those unclaimed lottery tickets. And those will all be made on game day from a first come, first serve basis. I know that folks from Clemson are used to the fact that the student tickets are free. I can tell you right now, as somebody who went somewhere who had to pay for a football and men's basketball season ticket package, I can say y'all are fortunate. I'm not trying to say it like that to be snooty. And I know that the free tickets is something that Clemson wanted to at least keep in the fold. But I'm thinking this is a way to not only change the demand, which is growing, but it also is going to take care of, at least in their mind, they're trying to take care of the fact that too many people are getting tickets and not using them.
Well, the question I ask is it just a different way of paying for a ticket? Because in my day, you paid an activity fee.
That's at South Carolina, yes.
And if you knew that part of that money was for the right to have a seat, but you think you paid for the activity. So
Clemson does not have such a fee, though. That's the thing. They don't have a fee that goes into the school that again goes to athletics. They don't have a fee of that nature.
But this is sort of interesting because it's almost like you're feeling that if you're a student and I can get into Clemson, hey, doesn't that mean I get a football ticket? I mean, it's almost like feels like it's
American capitalism. Yeah, it's very capitalistic,
but it's very difficult. The other thing is just to think about things that people think are nebulous. Here we go with a few questions.
Yes.
You pay for a single student ticket.
Yes.
Okay. Who am I sitting next to? Do I go get a friend and say, look, are you buying season tickets this year? Yeah. Let's get our tickets together. Or you may have a girlfriend or whatever and say, let's get our tickets together. Or what do? Or we get a group that sits there and say, okay, fine, I'm going to sit next to so-and-so the next time we get. It's almost like you have to compare notes to make sure you're sitting somebody you're familiar with.
Trust me, it's not a perfect formula.
Yeah.
And one of the things they did, I can only give you the cross comparison to when I was in school, but midway through my time in school, they made all the students sit in one particular section, and they made a general admission. So from that perspective, you got, whether it was your season ticket pass or you picked up your tickets at the beginning of the season or whatever, and you would go in and you would sit general admission. It was fine. And that at least changed things. If you had a specific group you wanted to sit with, you can do group seating as well, but that was only for groups that were, I think, 10 or more. So stuff like, so again, if you just want to sit with somebody, you go in at the same time. I don't know necessarily how that process is going to work at Clemson. We did reach out to the folks there for a comment, and we're still efforting, if that's as the parlance of our times would say, still efforting response from those people. But we will get you at least more of the answers to those questions, and we'll continue to talk about it here on Sports Talk and whether or not this is the perfect way to quote unquote fill the hill. Mike Morgan's weekly appearance thus comes your way next. We'll talk some football and also some Braves baseball with Mike when he joins us next here on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. It's now time for Morgan on the Move, our weekly visit with ESPN and SEC Network play-by-play man Mike Morgan. It's brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union, their mortgage team, more equipped than ever to help you with the mortgage process, whether buying or refinancing. Visit foundersfcu.com/mortgage. And by BP Skinner Clothiers, people nationwide get their custom-made suits and accessories from Brent Skinner. Find them in Columbia, in the Vista, or no matter where you are, Brent will come to you. Visit bpskinnerclothiers.com to set up an appointment. Mike, you are in the capital city of the state of Maryland, if I'm correct to assume.
You are correct. In fact, I'm looking across the water right now at the campus of Navy, and I had a chance to tour that a little bit today, check out the football stadium, and it's just a gorgeous campus overall. It's amazing how much they've adopted their athletics now. You know, obviously, back in the day, back when Army and Navy were perennial powers, we were used to that. But the days of Roger Staubach and Doc Blanchard and, you know, all the other famous Army Navy guys, that took a major dip. And obviously Army and Navy can't quite compete with the heavyweights of today, but Navy's trying to prove everybody wrong on that. I mean, they've had pockets of really good success of late. They've got a highly coveted coach, and I can see why there's a lot to be attracted to here. You know, if you're okay with that lifestyle, it's a beautiful campus, beautiful facilities, and they've made a heck of an investment now in Division I athletics and playing in the American Conference.
You know, having dealt with that Army-Navy game and Ken Niumatalolo, you know, though those coaches are about as good to deal with as any, and you know, it's a much different type of game than, you know, your normal college football Saturday fare. And I tell anybody who hasn't been that's something they have to do on their bucket list.
It's on mine, and I've interviewed Coach Ken, I'll call him, because I'm not entirely. I had the last name down when we had him on the show, but when we were doing the show in Atlanta, and myself and Tony Barnhart and guys like that, we would always that week have the coaches on about that game, and everybody who's ever been to it says the same thing, like you got to go. So that is definitely on the bucket list before everything else is done, to get one Army-Navy game under the belt, because it's more than just a college football game when you consider all of those young men do, not only for their respective programs, but for the country.
Who in your mind is getting too much love in the SEC right now, at least in the East?
Oh, good question. I mean, look, it's hard to say Georgia. Georgia deserves all the love that they have gotten. That doesn't mean that it's their birthright to win the East this year. But when you look at Jake Fromm coming back, and obviously the thumb injury on the offhand is the latest news, but he's going to be fine. And when you look at what they have coming back around him, there's no reason to think Georgia should not be the favorite to win the East. I don't totally understand the love for Florida right now. I'm a Dan Mullen guy, and I think it was a great hire, but I don't think just because he has success with other quarterbacks similar to Felipe Franks in other places, that Felipe Franks is all of a sudden going to turn into a good quarterback. I saw a young man who really looked puzzled out there, seemed to have trouble reading defenses, looked completely out of sorts, and I don't know if Dan Mullen himself is going to change that, but yet a lot of people are still very high on Florida. So maybe that would be, if I were kind of doing a underrated, overrated, they might be slightly on the overrated scale at this point.
Well, you know, looking at Clemson and Alabama, it's not anything to do with Alabama or Clemson fatigue, but these two schools are in interesting, I wouldn't say predicaments, Mike, but two with people thinking that they've got four quarterbacks and you can only play one at a time. Do you feel that any of those teams, a quarterback controversy can really discombobulate the chemistry of either of those schools?
I don't think so. In the case of Alabama, definitely not. I just don't think that Alabama. They've proven they can win national championships with very pedestrian quarterback play. So now they've gone away from that a little bit more. They've become more pass happy, and I think Lane Kiffin got that ball rolling where they opened it up more. But with all the talent they have on defense and in the running game, they could throw 10 passes a game and still win a national championship, I'm convinced. Clemson might be a little bit different animal, but even still, I don't see a point in time where it becomes a huge distraction. And nowadays, we've just become more accepting of the fact that some schools are going to have two different types of quarterbacks, one that is one style and one that's another. So I don't think anything is going to derail those two programs right now, the way they're rolling along and the talent that they possess.
I know that the Braves, I'll get you out of here on a baseball question, Mike. I know the Braves had a little bit of a rough time playing Corn's Yankees, but I'm wondering if we're on the verge of seeing a big move, a push for something to get done at the trade deadline, or whether this is a stand pat situation and they try to help the young guys go through this and see if they can do it on their own for the first time.
It's going to be interesting because it's not a stand pat situation in that they know what they need and they're obviously contenders. What they need is another starter, and I hate to use the term frontline because who doesn't want a frontline starter? But they don't exactly grow on trees, and you got to give up a lot to get one. But they're certainly in the market for an established starter. Let's put it that way. And if they can get one, they would gladly make a move to do it. However, they're not going to be foolish in the way of giving up a whole lot to get that, because while this year has been great and they're certainly going to do everything they can to make it to the postseason, 2019 is still the year that is on the calendar where they're really going to go for all. We're going to see them be active in free agency, I believe, and they're going to have a nucleus of young players coming back that really will have them not only potential to just be a surprise team as they are this year, but a team that truly can contend for the National League pennant.
Mike, we understand you have to run. Hopefully it's not to enlist. That's my own vote.
That would be bad news for the Naval Academy and for our country. So the answer is no on both.
Anchors away.
I'm going to say, if you have any seasickness, be sure to bring along the motion sickness stuff. They have pills for that now.
I'd be the only guy enlisted in the Navy that brings a Costco-size Dramamine in my bag. So I don't think that would go over well.
Just like George Costanza said, they don't have land guys in the Navy. Appreciate the time, Mike. Enjoy your week.
Okay, guys.
That's Mike Morgan joining us here on Sports Talk here.
You know, we talked to Mike, but about a year and a half ago, well, 2 years ago, and I asked him because I thought he did a creditable job when he was thrust into the position. And I asked him if Brian Snitker would be the manager. His thoughts were, no, they're going for a big name. I said, well, and my feeling was I was ambivalent about it, but I thought Snitker was a good guy because if you are bringing up all those young players they have, and the guy is a minor league lifer, he knows about instruction of players, and who better to instruct them as they get to the highest league than a guy who's been through the wars of instructing players as a minor league manager, but also now had gotten a year of experience as a major league manager.
I mean, he's been in that system so long. I mean, he's also been with the team since 2007, at least with the big club, and then of course the stint to go managing Gwinnett. And I think, you know, there's a long history of guys who have, you know, worked their way up from the minor league ranks in that same parent club to manage the parent club. I mean, it happened with Davey Johnson and the '86 Mets. It's happened with the Yankees. It's happened with a bunch of other places. I mean, St. Louis Cardinals had Mike Matheny. He brought them to a championship after kind of being forced into early retirement, but with an organization that he knew very, very well with the St. Louis Cardinals. So, I mean, it's not something that's completely a foreign concept, and I think they like having that consistent voice, especially when that voice is part of the uprise when it comes to the fact that this franchise now is on the up and up, and you are getting more and more of those younger guys, you know, the Acuñas, the Albies, and players who are still yet to come from them. It's certainly something that's and interesting to watch, and I'm glad that he's getting the reward and the spoils as a result of that.
Well, nobody here heading toward the All-Star break would wonder, first of all, if the Braves would be in first place and a game and a half ahead of the Phillies. Nobody would thunk that, but the Nationals look like they are really taking a tumble.
And I'm not sad about it. I hope they lose and continue to lose. That's what I said. Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Getting a couple of responses in on Twitter from our discussion about the Clemson student ticket policy. Again, moving to a half and half, or not really half and half, really a 1/3 paid and the rest free based on a lottery. This is from Stacy, and I will at least preface this by saying Stacy has a Gamecock logo in her avatar. She said, greedy. How much more do they need? Look at all the TV money, playoff money, IPTAY, and ACC Bowl pool money. Schools should be ashamed for doing stuff like this. What, be ashamed for thinking like capitalists? I mean, I don't understand. Again, they're everywhere else. Students pay for tickets. I get this is a Clemson only thing, usually when it comes to the paying for the tickets. But at the same time, it's like, guys, they're not making them all pay. It's only if you want to have a guaranteed season ticket. It's like the policy is going to be the same for students, basically because of the lottery. And the other thing about this lottery too is that you find out in August the results of that lottery, so that you can plan about it, and it's not like a week of game thing. So it's like if you can't go to that game or something comes up, you can give that ticket back and sell it. So again, I don't understand why people are balking at that particular part of it.
I guess the other question to ask is, you're not paying a license fee, so it's almost like every year is different,
right?
Because what is the first thing you think of when somebody says you're going to buy a season ticket?
PSL.
People think in terms of either joining a booster club or, as you say, the PSL.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is you have the opportunity to buy that same ticket the next year.
Right.
What you're seeing here is, let's face it, and this is not just Clemson, this all colleges. The one schedule 1 year may be more attractive than the previous year. So do we have more students competing when Clemson has the more attractive home schedule? Or how would they work that? That's what I want to see.
Yeah. So Tyler says South Carolina students don't have to make a choice to pay for football tickets. They go to smaller events, gain loyalty points, and they are rewarded with a free ticket. That's exactly how college sports should always work. I would add parenthetically. No, I wouldn't add. I don't want to add. I could have. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I wanted to say something snooty, but I'm being better. It's okay.
I'm just thinking if there's an activity fee involved,
right,
you may still be paying for that ticket.
It's fun.
Depends on whether you describe it.
It's fun. It's great, but who knows?
But then again, let's face it. There are some students who, for lack of a better term, and I'm not going to go into anything like this, but they prefer to be in a group of their friends in a TV room with a big screen hanging over them, or
just stay out of the tailgate,
or a restaurant,
or stay, like I said, or stay out of the tailgate and watch it on TV in the back of somebody's car. This is not a recruiting note, but it is a very positive note for USC baseball. One of their top signees for the 2018 class, left-handed pitcher / outfielder Josiah Seitler of Swansea, will forego his professional opportunities that he had with Cincinnati. He was drafted in the 12th round by the Reds. He's not going to sign. He's going to enroll at USC, the highest drafted Gamecock signee to decide to opt for school over the pros. The surrogately delivered Kornblut recruiting report begins now. We start with Korn's interview with Orlando, Florida, sports star Brandon Fields, who is a 2020 South Carolina commit. He announced that on Tuesday night. Originally, we thought he was going to be a baseball and football commit and count only for baseball, but now it seems that there's been a shift there, at least as far as his interviewing with Will Muschamp. We did not get an official Spurs up because of the fact that he was originally looked at as a baseball commitment. But according to the interview he had with Korn out of Dr. Phillips High, he says that he is going to sign a football letter of intent December of 2019 and will count as a football scholarship for the 2019 2019 going into the 2020 class and enroll early to be ready to play football for them in the 2020 season, and also be a baseball player during that year as well. So she could contribute as soon as 2 years from now.
So what you're telling me is I can circumvent the Spurs up by being a great baseball player.
Exactly.
And threaten to sign a baseball scholarship.
If he intends to still be a football player, he is the fourth commitment for the 2020 football class, second to Mikos Todd of Georgia, the second running back, that is, to Mikos Todd of Georgia. So a signee from the local Midlands that is going to the upstate. AC Flora's Harmon Cox, out shortstop from AC Flora, 2020 commit to Clemson. Found that out on Tuesday night. He hit .291 last year with a homer and 21 RBIs. We told you earlier in the show, Clemson quarterback target Brendan Clark, Midlothian, Virginia, just outside of Richmond. He committed Wednesday night to Notre Dame. Also was considering North Carolina in his final lineup. Clemson, one of the top 6 with wide receiver Julian Fleming of Pennsylvania. Also in the top 6 with Clemson, Ohio State, Southern Cal, Virginia Tech, Penn State, and Georgia. Clemson now getting involved with 6'11" center Brandon Stone of Arden, North Carolina. He's been considering Nebraska, ECU, South Florida, and Arkansas, some of the new schools on his radar. USC was in with him earlier, one of his top schools, he said, but he has not heard from the Gamecocks recently. He's already visited LaSalle out of Pennsylvania and also has a scheduled visit to Penn State in late September. USC target 2019 corner Jaden Hill of Madison, Alabama, offered by Oklahoma. He was at one of Will Muschamp's camps last month and recently visited Tennessee. And that is recruiting for this 5th day of July 2018. Remember, you can check it out on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. Also on Twitter, use the hashtag STRecruiting. Also, Furman got a commitment from Bryce McCormick. He is a 2019 commit as well, so that's good news for Furman. Same also goes to Austin Jones at a 2019 commitment as well. He is out of the state of Georgia. So Furman getting a pair here over the last couple of days. And again, also, we are patiently waiting for the Saturday announcement of Chris Steele, the Bellflower, California product, who, while Rivals.com's Southern Cal Trojans reporter still not taking down that post about the Chris Steele commitment, still not ashamed that he broke the story of the kid's commitment, which, by the way, that's low. And I know people try to say that's something that Corn does. Corn does not do that. Okay, so don't come at me with that garbage. If a kid wants to wait and make an announcement on a particular day, you respect the kid's decision to make that happen. And that's what they mean. They say, respect my decision, respect my, all that stuff. Now, if the situation where, we call a kid and he tells us, hey, I just committed, we ask him, hey, is it okay to you haven't put this out on social media or anything, are we okay to put it out? That's fine. Then you just then you get lucky that way. Mm-hmm. But to do what this guy did, I mean, that's low, in my opinion.
Well, I don't even understand what his rationale would be or motivation to do that is concerned. I mean, because the kid has this one chance to announce where he's going to school. Have some respect on. What are you going to say now? I was the first to break it. And do you feel good about it? But the feeling is, from what you all read, that the guy's a West Coast guy and he's going to stay with Southern California. Right. But we've seen stranger things before when guys, commit to a school you didn't think they were going to commit to. So.
We've seen Zion Williamson be 100% all in to Clemson and then end up at Duke. Oh, wait. Who said that? Was that you?
That was me.
That was you who said that?
When he said that he had already, been with Duke all this time, you had a feeling that he would venture back. But he wanted to, I think he and his parents wanted to have at least show a modicum of respect for the in-state schools before he made his ultimate decision.
We'll continue our review of spring football and look ahead to the fall from our in-state programs. Mark Tucker, head coach at Charleston Southern, is going to join us next here on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. We are continuing our look at spring football for our in-state schools and looking ahead to the fall. Mark Tucker's squad opened up spring practice in February and went through the month and had some very interesting things to try and build on in a 6-5 campaign a year ago. He now joins us here on Sports Talk. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. How have things been going?
Just fine. Weather's beautiful. Our kids are having a great summer. We're working incredibly hard. Great mindset. Looking forward to getting cranked up in about 4 weeks.
What do you think were your biggest goals going into the spring, and do you believe you accomplished them?
Going into the spring, establishing a few positions. We improvement out of our running back core, development there. The exit of Shane, developing our quarterbacks. London had a very good spring. Our young quarterbacks and Jack Chambers. They didn't lack for reps, that's for sure. We're still very good up front defensively. Our linebacking core, losing Zane Cruz and an awful lot of snaps played. J.D. Sosby is a fine player, and we've got quality depth. Eddie King had a very good spring. Stephon Williams had a very good spring, and our guys out back. We need to stay healthy, just like every other team in America. But we had a good spring. We accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. We're enjoying ourselves again, and we're enjoying each other again, as we have since we came in here in 2013.
What does London bring to the table as the quarterback? You mentioned that Shane, the parts, and obviously that's a big hole to fill with London. He did start 3 games a year ago and played in 10. What can he bring to the table for you to stabilize that position?
Difference maker, speed. This is his 4th year in the program. He is a rising redshirt junior, eligibility-wise. He's matured. He understands how to prepare himself now. But he is difference maker speed, strong arm, good with the ball vertically down the field. Him right, he's a difference maker for the people, against the people we have to play to compete for a conference championship and postseason.
Of course, you mentioned the defense. You graduate Anthony Ellis and other key contributors, but you still have some guys coming back. Solomon Brown, that defense for you obviously is something that you're going to need to at least keep an eye on. What are some of the things that you've looked on? Who are some of the guys who have risen to the occasion with the departure of those guys?
Well, we're going to miss Anthony. Solomon is a true All-American. Johnny Robinson, we feel is as good as any inside technique in FCS in the country. Difference maker player. We just developing depth behind it, and we've had a luxury here. We've recruited very, very well, and we've had a luxury of depth up front defensively, which is not afforded to many FCS programs. Quality depth, where we can rotate guys and keep them fresh, and it's played itself out in terms of our productivity. That's something that we're not going to have quite the depth we've had in terms of proven depth. That's a bit of a concern because you get accustomed to something, and I won't say we took it for granted or are taking it for granted, but all of a sudden it's not there or there's a little bit of a question mark. It plays itself out because they control the line of scrimmage and they make things. There's a cause and effect for everything. When you can defend the box and not have to put people on an island, and you don't have to bring a 5th guy or, God forbid, a 6th guy often enough to create pressure, then you're pretty stout up front. You're pretty stout in the box. That's our challenge, and our challenge for us is developing quality depth to go along with who we know is going to line up and play to make strides and improvements up front offensively. Bottom line, it's never going to change. That's where the game's won and lost.
We're talking to Mark Tucker, head coach of Charleston Southern. Yeah, I find it interesting from last year, and I wanted to ask you about this, the filling of the schedule with Indiana. That was something that was a tad peculiar. Of course, the weather had effect on Indiana's schedule, obviously with that game that they had to cancel. What went into your philosophy around adding that game and making that thing happen and kind of giving another opportunity for your kids to play at a big Power 5 school?
Well, from a schedule standpoint, I think anybody in their right mind would rather go 45 minutes to an hour up the road and play South Carolina State. To deny our kids an opportunity to play 11 games regular season for a second straight year, no, we weren't going to do that. And Indiana reached out to us very quickly, and we were in the midst of that while our kids were home when Irma was rolling through and on its path.
Mm-hmm.
I called our captains unanimously. I talked to our staff before that unanimously. Let's go. Let's play. So that wasn't a difficult decision. It wasn't long, drawn out, or any lengthy discussion of any kind. Chance to compete.
Fantastic. And you have a very big competition point here in the opening part of the season on September the 1st when you go down to the Swamp. What do you think that experience will be like for your team?
Well, I've already met Dan Mullen, so for me personally, it won't be as new in terms of saying hello and introducing ourselves. All FCS programs are bound by one contract game at least. It's beneficial, and there's so many ways that are quite obvious to most. It's exciting. We've been into, we played Georgia, Vandy, played Alabama, Mississippi State now. So we've been in these venues. It's exciting for the kids. We have an awful lot of Florida kids in our program. It's exciting for them. It's an opportunity to go compete. And I just want us to go down there and perform well and make a much better showing and compete as an end result far more reflective than we did a year ago in Starkville. That's my goal for us.
You obviously get a game against an in-state school at the Citadel, and obviously a couple of others before you get to your conference season. Give at least a window into the scheduling philosophy of those games you have here throughout September and October.
Well, we renew the rivalry game with the Citadel. We go down there in the third week of the season. We come back from Gainesville, and we have an open week, and then we go 10 straight. And I wanted that open week prior to going down to the Citadel. It's obviously a very big game. Then we host Elon after that. We get Lynchburg, and we start to enter around conference play.
What was the importance of kind of getting that back on the books, so to speak, with Citadel? I know that's something. Obviously, the intercity games have always been kind of a real sore spot with certain places in the state, not necessarily in the Low Country. But what was the big philosophy in trying to get there with Coach Thompson?
Well, we need games, and they need games, and we're 20 minutes away from one another, and it makes sense.
Last one for you, Coach. Just main goals to try and get to before you open fall practice. What are you looking for out of your team when you guys reconvene fully here in August?
That we continue the work that we've done through the summer. That we continue the work that we've done in the off season and in the spring ball. That we be who we are capable of being. That we love each other the way that we have, and we take care of one another. And we compete, and focusing on the process and let results take care of themselves, and maturing in that regard. And we are well underway. We've got good players. We've got good young men. We really, really do. We're blessed. Putting it together and staying healthy.
Coach, thanks so much for the time. We'll talk to you closer to the season.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
That's Charleston Southern head coach Mark Tucker. We'll come back with more on Sports Talk after this on South Carolina Radio Network. couple of news and notes here on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Remember, we're going to have the money coach, Fran Halloran, join us at the bottom of the hour. You saw Jerron Blossom game in the Summer League. We've been looking at some of the Summer League stuff here lately between the pro and myself. 16 points, 10 rebounds the other day in San Antonio's victory over the Atlanta Hawks in the Summer League that's going on right now. PJ Dozier, Mont Carrera appearing on the roster for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Sindarius Thornwell, of course, will play for the Clippers. And today, Gabe DeVoe found out he's going to be on the Charlotte Hornets Summer League squad. So that's an interesting thing for him, and it's good to see him get a tryout pro. I don't know how his game translates to an NBA roster, just because I'm wondering, with a high volume score, what's the one thing you have to be able to do in the NBA? That's play defense, and it's something obviously that when you think about it is something that he'll have to prove here, whether it's in the summer or even in the G League if he gets there.
Well, let's face it. Anytime you can get on the stage, it's almost just like acting.
Right.
Only thing you need is a director and a producer to see you, and they'll find a part for you. If you can't find that part there, he can find a lucrative contract overseas somewhere, and that's the key. Just getting on a team to be seen, because you'll see coaches from all over the world there, and some of these American coaches that's helping out during the summer leagues, they end up coaching some of the foreign teams.
True, absolutely, and certainly that's a very big part of that. I wanted to ask you this just because it happened in the balance of time between when I saw you last on the program versus us coming on to do the show. But the Boogie Cousins move to Golden State, good, bad for the league, or should the NBA have stepped in? Do you think that's something where we're looking at an unfortunate thing developing into the 2018-19 campaign?
Well, there's a reason a guy of the talent, and let's throw the personality out of it. Let's just talk about pure talent. There's a reason a guy with that pure talent is making, and I use the term loosely, only $5 million on the year. And that is because not so much the personality, he's had a ruptured Achilles.
Right.
And when you're a guy with a ruptured Achilles, it's hard to heal anyway. But when you're a guy that has a ruptured Achilles and you're floating around at 260 plus late and 6'11", that's a difficult gamble to take, and not many teams can take that gamble. But if you're Golden State and you've won 2 championships out of the last 3 years, or 3 out of the last 4 years, and you can take a gamble on a guy like that, because he may not be able to even get on a court until late December or January because of that injury. So it's a chance they're taking for 1 year. And that's not to say this is not a rental.
Well, I find it hard to believe that he couldn't command an actual deal outside of the mid-level exception that
even with the injury.
I find it hard to believe that somebody wouldn't, because again, that he's got something you can't teach. That's size. And I understand and I understand that, the people are wondering about his durability. And look, I mean, guy hasn't played a full season. It just to me is, I would find it short-sighted to just give up on that guy. I know that in the NBA they give up on more big guys than anything, just because again it's for some reason the bigger body is harder to take care of for whatever reason. I'm not somebody who studies the body, if you will, but for some reason it just seems like that's always something.
Well, yeah, one thing I can tell you about if I would bring Shaq in this room, and you know how huge Shaq is.
Oh, yeah.
His heart is about the same size as yours.
True.
So, in other words, you got your major organs dealing with supplying blood and fluids to a body that's twice the normal size of the average human being. So their organs have to work harder, for one thing. And then their joints and everything, for whatever reason, when they grow, and you've seen this before, when a guy grows too fast, his joints have a lot of stress on them. So it's a lot of maintenance with a big body. But there hasn't been too many guys in the NBA, and I'll say this, in the history of the league, and I'm talking just pure talent, with that girth combined with quickness that Boogie Cousins has. Now Boogie has that thing of this attitude that has to, and he says he's been working on it.
Right.
Now, if a person recognizes that his attitude needs to change, then I'm willing to listen because he mentioned it.
Right.
So, and with this crew at Golden State, probably the team that can handle this sort of thing, especially with his rehab still going. But this team already dangerous can just be ultra dangerous. But we've seen teams that stockpile too much talent and they fail down the stretch.
I think about the Malone Payton experiment in Los Angeles, how that was just
they were
a complete disaster.
Yeah, they were on the last legs.
Yeah.
A
lot of egos in one room, man.
By that time, as I used to jokingly say and had my family laughing, I say, Peyton has gone from being the glove to the oven mitt. That's how he was playing. That's
good.
That's
very good.
He was not the same guy who could get. I've never seen another guy who could get around on not having a consistent shot at the position he played, but was so valuable defensively that you could not leave him off the floor.
Cousins games played over his career in Sacramento: 81, 64, 75, 71, 59, 65, 55. Last year in New Orleans, 17 out of the again, so 55 plus 17, that gives him 72 for the year, and then last year played just 48. So again, durability an issue, but at the same time, I also read off the fact that he does average in his career a double-double, 21.5 points per contest and 11 rebounds. If you could just get him on the floor, I don't know if he's going to average that necessarily in Golden State because there's only one ball and you can only split it however many different ways. But if you get him on the floor and he can get you, I don't know what the number would be, 10 and 8. Maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's 15 and 10. I don't know, but I find it hard to believe that there wasn't a long list of teams that were willing to sign up just for that. Now, I know, again, there's an attraction of going to Golden State. I personally think the NBA should have stepped in and said, this is hurting our competitive balance. And they did it. They've done it before with the Chris Paul to the Laker trade. They went in and said, now, again, that was a trade. That wasn't a signing. But, I mean, Adam Silver, if he actually had a pair of you-know-whats, he could have stepped in and said, look, this is a problem. This is a problem. Our league is boring. Our league is boring. And yes, the popularity of the league is as strong as ever, and people watch at a record rate internationally. It's America's most internationally recognized sport. It's America's most internationally recognized sport out of the 4 major sports leagues. The NBA is more recognized internationally than any of them, and they do a better job internationally than anything outside the Super Bowl. So, in my opinion, for the betterment of the game, they should have stepped in and done something.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you because here's the key point. You're getting a guy with an injury that could be debilitating because of his size. And the other thing is, I'm not so certain that the league owners didn't look at Adam Silver and say, look, Golden State may be able to handle his attitude, but my team is this consummated right now. We can't deal with that in the locker room. We can't deal with a Boogie Cousins, and maybe it's just that the league doesn't care. They said let Golden State have this problem because it looks like he's a 1-year rental. They're taking a $5 million flyer on him, and I think they really let a valuable commodity off the bench in JaVale McGee go for a song,
basically.
When you messing with chemistry like Golden State has, which is those mad scientists have gotten in there, it'll be interesting to see how this works out.
Speaking of valuable, our most valuable guest, literally money-wise, is next. That is the money coach, Fran Halloran. Welcome back to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. It is reason we're laughing is because this is actually a really cool thing because over the last couple of days, Brian Leonard, our normal producer, has been out of the country on a little vacation. It is that time of year for us in radio where a lot of guys will take off. And we called in at least an unfamiliar person to us, but familiar by name, in from the bullpen. Fran Halloran's son, Frank, is running the board for us this week, and he gets to actually produce a segment that his dad is on right now here on Sports Talk as Fran Halloran's Money Coach segment comes your way here now. I would say that you're probably tickled pink that your son's across the glass here with us, Fran.
I am, Will. Good evening to you and Pro. Yeah, I'm a proud daddy. Frank is he is exceeding every expectation a dad could have for his young, 20-year-old young man son. So he's doing so well, and thank you all for giving him the opportunity to do this tonight. I know he's thrilled to be a part of Sports Talk.
Well, you want to know
thank y'all for.
You want to know the one reason I brought him on is because even though he has an interest in radio, I know that he's smart because he's smart enough to, while have the passion for radio, to take his talents to law school and turn that into something actually that he can maybe prove to be a difference instead of yakking on the radio like we do here.
Well, I don't know, Will. You guys have a pretty good gig, yakking on the radio about sports. Let me tell you, I don't mind saying that I wouldn't mind yakking on the radio about sports.
Yeah, it's good. We like it. We like it.
It's a good gig if you can get it.
It's a good gig that if you can get it, but at the same time, I wouldn't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing that. So that's kind of the way that I don't know how to do anything else, so to speak.
Well, I hear you, and that's kind of why I like doing these segments each Thursday night because I get to mix something I love, sports, with something else that I love, and that's really taking a hard look at money and how people can do better with what they have. And that's what brought me to my topic tonight, really, because I like everyone else, saw the news this week. I'm not sure if you guys even talked about it this evening, but do we realize that there are going to be 20 NFL players? They're going to miss, on average, 2.5 games this coming season because they're suspended.
Crazy.
Have you guys? It's 20 guys, and it's well-known guys. I mean, the most well-known is a guy we all are familiar with, Jameis Winston. But Jameis Winston, Reuben Foster, Aaron Jones, Jamon Brown, Robert Turbin, Nigel Bradham, Julian Edelman.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are being suspended for anywhere from 1 to 4 games. The average for the 20 of them is about 2.5 games. And while that's, something that happens year in, year out, these guys are being suspended, 6 of them for substance abuse, 3 of them for personal conduct issues. Get this, 11 of them for PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs. And that in itself is a topic you guys ought to talk about. Do we really care if NFL players are using PEDs?
I've been a very big proponent of let them use anything you can find in a GNC.
Well,
honestly, if you can buy it in GNC, you can use it.
Well, the key
you can use it.
Yeah, the key you said was 3 letters, NFL.
Right.
Because baseball is such a personal and shall we say statistically driven sport.
Yes.
That when people use PEDs, it's almost like they're going to be excommunicated.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they'll be sent down to Hades is what they're going to be. But
that's right.
But nobody has asked the Pittsburgh Steelers of the 70s to give back those Super Bowl trophies they won once they found out that probably their whole offensive line was using it.
Well, the weirdest
and the D-line and the linebackers.
Yes.
My old friend out of Houston, Barry Warner, who basically he prides himself as basically the Phil Kornblut of Houston. He's been working in this business as long as Phil has, and we worked together when I lived in Houston. He used to tell the story of walking into the Houston Oilers locker room, and you might as well have thought that the pill counter was an M&M tray because people would just take them out by the spoonful and pop them before games for painkillers.
Exactly right. For painkillers, steroids, amphetamines. It ran rampant in the NFL especially in the 70s and into the 80s. So I'm not even sure that I care if a guy's using a PED. I understand it's illegal, but Will, I have to agree with you. If you can buy it in a GNC, it ought to be okay.
Now the Winston thing. The Winston thing is obviously a much different thing because, again, it's a personal conduct issue, and I have my own. I have my own thoughts on that whole issue, just from the standpoint of where he sits and all that, and that's not at least for the purposes of this discussion, but at the same time, the NFL, it seems like their suspensions get more attention than anything else because, number one, that's a game check, and number two, there's only 16 games, so a suspension is
it's huge.
It's a deterrent. It's a huge deterrent.
It's huge, and that really is why I really started doing some research today into this because the average team salary is $2.735 million. That's the average, okay? And some of these guys are missing, as I said, 1 to 4 games. The average among these 20 guys is 2.5 games. The average check per game for these guys, get this number, $170,000.
It's money I don't want to be missing.
If they miss 2.5 games, $425,000. That is 15.5% of their income. Now, I want you to think about it in your own life. Will, Pro, Fran, Frank, Phil. I realize Phil's not with us tonight.
Phil already lost half his salary gambling in Vegas. So
there you go. But could any of us lose 15% of our salary for a year?
Hell no.
I can't lose 0.15%.
I need every last bit of that.
Exactly. It is a huge deterrent, yet these guys are still finding ways. 20 NFL players are still going to be suspended for as many as 4 games. The average is 2.5. And I guess what my point in all of this is, 15% would hurt me, it hurt my family, it hurt all of us. I guess maybe when you're talking about these millionaires, 15% isn't enough because year in and year out, these guys are still getting suspended for substance abuse, personal conduct, and performance-enhancing drugs. And it's absolutely asinine. I cannot understand why they're not getting the message.
Knowing the enmity that exists between the NFL and its Players Association, I don't think any of those suspension totals are going to go up anytime soon, just again, because DeMaurice Smith and Roger Goodell talk about as much as, a dysfunctional couple would. I know you wanted to talk about Leonard Fournette here real quick because this is a really cool story.
I do, because this is a really cool story. Leonard Fournette heard that a young lady at his alma mater, LSU, was struggling financially and needed some help. And dadgummit, if that young man didn't step up and do the right thing. And I have always liked that kid, that young man. He's not a kid anymore. But I liked him when he was at LSU. And I think in the midst of all these 20 guys being suspended for a variety of reasons, it's really good to see the good guys in the NFL. And Leonard Fournette is one of them. He's helping a young lady finish her degree without going into further debt. I love that.
Paying for the rest of her college. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what an example set for, and I know Leonard Fournette probably studied his example, is what Warrick Dunn did throughout his career.
Great. That's exactly right. You're right. Warrick Dunn was such a giver, such a giver. So even in the mix of the craziness, there's some good guys. Hey, 888-779-2557, 888-779-2557. Higgins and Halloran. We're here to help you get on the road to financial freedom. Thank you guys for having me.
Almost as if he had the radio clock in his head, knowing that I was going to get him to plug his biz. But appreciate the time, Fran. And thanks for letting us use your son. But we are going to pay him, so I guess that's all he had to say. I guess he was just happy. He was happy that. Once I told him we were going to pay his son. So that's a good thing. We'll come back. We'll close up shop for a Thursday edition of Sports Talk after this. Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. They're doing a special on the ESPN, the magazine body issue, and they're showing noted vegetarian Prince Fielder. I don't know how he can be a vegetarian and still look the way he does. I think it's a myth. I think he's still eating meat.
Yeah, he's a vegetarian, but he's not a vegan.
Right.
So he probably eats a lot of fats or whatever.
He's been a strict vegetarian since early 2008. I don't know, man.
Well, that's a big carrot. I'll tell you that.
Jesus. There was something else I wanted to there was something else I was thinking of, and then seeing Prince Fielder threw me off.
That threw you off, eh?
Yeah. Webb Simpson shot a 61 today in the military tribute at the Greenbrier in West Virginia, the PGA Tour event. We're going to talk tomorrow to our friend George Bryan III for our weekly Birdies and Bogeys segment. Weekham 8 under par, 62. Joaquin Niemann -7, 2 back of the lead. Kelly Croft 3 back of the lead. He is in 4th place. Among the local notables, Sam Saunders at 2 under, same with Russell Henley. They both shot 68. Billy Haas shooting 69. Billy McGirt, Wesley Bryan, Kevin Kisner, all shooting a very nice 69 today, tied for 64th. Scott Brown, Tommy Gainey at even par, and Jonathan Bird is at +1. Phil Mickelson also in this tournament. He shot a -4, 66. Oh, I remember it was the baseball. Duh. Marlins 7, Nationals nothing. They can't score enough for me.
Wow.
They can't score enough.
But you weren't an Expo hater. But when they moved to Washington.
No, this is the problem about the Nationals and their fans. And really this is a problem about people in D.C. in general. This is why people don't understand about me. I was born in New York, but spent the plurality of time in Virginia, the Washington, D.C. area. So everybody who says that Will's a damn Yankee, I got y'all fooled because I spent most of my time south of the Mason-Dixon line, so y'all can shove it. And from that perspective, I'll say this. People in D.C. are such inferiority complex people. I would say they remind me of Carolina fans, but that would be a snarky thing to say around here, these parts. But there's an inferiority complex when it comes to fans from opposing cities or natives of D.C. or people who live there who invade the ballparks when their team goes there. So, like, when the Redskins play the Steelers, most of the stands are black and gold. When the Nationals play the Phillies, there's red in the stands, but not Nationals red. Or Met fans, there's blue and orange. And they just had such a disdain, and when they had their little modicum of success where they would get to the wild card round and not advance because they haven't done that since they've been there, they would have this little, inferiority complex and say, "Oh, look at you, blah 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 blah." Well, guess what? I hope the Marlins hang 10 on them tonight. It's 7-0 in the second. Bravo's had a real rough time against Orange Yankees. 2 out of 3 loss.
Yeah, but you're lucky with the young team they had to not go in there and get swept.
Right.
So to win that first game was huge. But the Yankees, that second game, that was anybody's game because they were up 6-0. And then the Yankees look up in the 7th and it's 6-5.
Yankees aren't fair, man.
They
really aren't.
And the balls, and they hit 2 balls in that inning that may have gone out to tie the game. But yeah, I think they're doing well on this 10-game road swing. They're 4-2 now, and of course they got the 4 games up in the old home of the Braves, one of the Braves' old homes in Milwaukee.
Yes, and should be a very intriguing series against the Brewers, who, of course, are battling for supremacy inside their own division in the National League Central because of the fact that obviously that is one of the I would say more hotly contested just because the Cubs are always strong, and it's weird. So many teams that we thought would be better by this time aren't. Like, for example, St. Louis is in a downward slide. The Dodgers are a team that many thought would maybe run away and hide with first place after winning the pennant last year, and they're a half game behind Arizona, who continues. It's funny. Arizona last year had this kind of sustained run where they were good for about 3/4 of the season and then kind of fell off. And 4 games separate the top 4 teams in the National League West. They
did early in this campaign started off like they were going to run away and hide, and then they started to struggle and fell back in the pack. I still say if they get their pitching healthy,
right,
you have to be scared of the Giants.
Of course.
And because they can sneak up on you. Madison Bumgarner,
Please.
if he gets back healthy,
you don't want to see him now.
He can be very dangerous. But yeah, Arizona's a team that I think doesn't get the respect. Maybe those ugly pewter uniforms they wear sometimes. But Paul Goldschmidt is one of the best hitters in baseball that nobody knows about.
He is. I think of him kind of in the same vein, and he's not with a small market team but he's from an underappreciated team that's never been good while he's there, and that's Mike Trout. I mean, people are talking about Mike Trout having this otherworldly season that's going to basically be completely useless because of the fact that the Angels are 44-43 and Houston is basically atop the AL West. So, and that's the other thing too, where I think baseball almost kind of has to step in and say, guys, we're really wasting the best years of a guy like Mike Trout. We got to put him somewhere where like people actually care, and
they care in Disneyland, don't they?
No, absolutely not.
There's some Angels fans there in Anaheim.
I'll look up and it'll be attendance, but I'm willing to bet that they can't draw flies there in that ballpark. They're a second class. You know what the Angels are? The Angels are the New York Islanders of baseball. They're in a city where they are completely dwarfed by the Dodgers.
That's why they moved to Anaheim.
Actually, they're sixth in average. They're sixth in average. So, but they're only filling up 81% of their ballpark, which is again their average attendance is sixth best in the league. Their total attendance is through 41 games. They've got 1.5 million fans. So I don't know if that's butts in seats or not. They have more people there than I thought they would.
There's a reason that you locate a stadium near Disneyland. People will stumble in to watch a baseball game and take the kids to Disneyland if I can do that. But one of the things I do like about Houston, and I think the Braves are following that same formula.
10-minute drive, by the way, on the 5 between Disneyland Park and Angel Stadium.
Yeah, and when you have to take and bite the bullet and bring in the young guys and build your farm system and lose 100 games, maybe, or 90-something games a year for 2 or 3 years. And then suddenly everybody asks, where did this team come from?
Right.
Well, it was grown and nurtured. It wasn't done overnight. And then you still have to keep your farm system there. And as Mike was saying, they may be players in the free agency next year. What the Yankees did wrong was they started loving free agency so much that they forgot about their farm system and really fell off. Well, you still have to develop players homegrown to really have a sustained success.
I will go a step further. You have to develop position players. Let other people develop your own pitching. Looking at you, Mets. Trying to
but the Mets have had tremendous pitchers who can't stay healthy.
That's the reason you don't try and anchor your franchise with pitching. Anchor your franchise with young hitters. Let somebody else develop your pitching, and you go trade for pitching or get it in free agency. That's why they are in the position that they are in now, and that's why the Astros are in the position that they are in now. That's why the Braves are in the position that they are in now, because they developed young hitters and got pitching from elsewhere.
Well, the Braves have done it the other way, too. However,
they have.
You have to say that Smoltz was in a trade.
Right.
Because Detroit needed Doyle Alexander to put them over
Maddox was a trade, too. I mean,
and Maddox was free agency because Maddox, one of the things they knew about Maddox is he did not want to play in New York.
Right.
He was a guy that wanted to play golf every day if he could, and he loved a quiet atmosphere that Atlanta provided.
I have more hot takes, but unfortunately we're out of time for tonight. But we will come back tomorrow and do more of the sportsy talky stuffy for the Professor Tom Hayes, for Willie P, for Korn, and Frank Halloran, who had a fantastic job these last 2 days. Appreciate it.